Next question is from Iowa West. What would your routine go-to workouts look like at age 45?
You mean right now?
Yeah.
I mean, most of us are getting, I'm the youngest and we're going to be 41.
man,
so I think we're all getting pretty close to this.
I think it's important to highlight what
3 years from now,
what we're looking at when we're talking about a 45-year-old. You either have the fitness fanatic who's 45 or the deconditioned 45-year-old. So two different people, right? The fitness fanatic.
You're also your goals too at that time.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. But so the fitness fanatic 45-year-old, they're probably going to have more wear and tear. There's more opportunity for crappy lifting or crappy training. There's definitely a decade of my training where I'm sure I did a lot of damage maybe to my body. So you got to take that into account. Someone who's deconditioned, at the age of 45, you start to notice a little bit slower recovery, I would say is probably the biggest thing. And then lifestyle. You're 45, you probably got kids, you probably got a mortgage, you got a job. So it's not like you have all the time and the sleep in the world to dedicate to training. So those are the considerations.
Yeah, it's just like anything else about being an adult at this level, right? Like there's a lot more prep that's involved. Like I've never had to like do mobility rituals and priming before workouts before. That wasn't even a thing in my mind. I would just get after it. And they're just things like that I always have to consider, and making sure I have an adequate amount of calories before I lift, or it's going to ruin, my entire workout. Like there's just things you notice, like patterns that have definitely intensified over the years that I have to, really consider how it's going to affect my next day and my next workout. So everything is a lot more thought out.
I'm going to speak to myself since I think there's so many variables on what this looks like, right? Like you said, there's depending on their level, their goals. This could be so different for so many people personally. And I feel like I'm in the transition of this right now in my life of like, what are my workouts going to look like, beyond 45, 50 years old going. And I think what it looks like that is different than what it has looked like in the previous decade is more flexibility on what I would constitute a workout, right? So, the meathead guy who cares about it, the way he looks, which was a major driver for me for most of my life, was all about my muscles, what looks good and how lean or body fat. Where now it's not like that for me. Now I do it for staying healthy and flexible and strong and stamina, and also how it affects my mood and how productive I am around the house and what a better partner I am. And so that doesn't necessarily require me hitting X amount of volume inside the gym. It actually requires me to do very, very little volume of strength training, like to maintain the physique that I worked really hard to get to. And so now, like working out, I may have planned like today's a lifting day, today's a leg day for me to train. Let's say it didn't work out, like it wouldn't be like it didn't work out. Maybe today I get home and instead I go for a 2-hour walk with Katrina.
Yeah.
And that would constitute a workout where I wouldn't count that as working out or maybe I don't get to work out at all. And so I then really adjust the way my eating is. So I think just in 45 and beyond, I think there's just more flexibility in what I would consider, working out and stuff like that. And, and then maybe, my 45th birthday is coming up. And so I just have a personal goal of, hey, I want to look pretty badass at 45 still. So I kind of ramp it up for the last 2 or 3 months before, or dial the diet in any tighter just so I can say, look, cool, I look cool at 45.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I just had recently with my brother-in-law, and he was kind of talking about getting back into it. But, I don't get what I used to get out of the workouts. And so he would decide to not do the workouts unless he could do the full length of like an hour to an hour and 20 and like hit all the body parts and all that stuff. And I'm like, look, man, you have to totally look at this differently now. There's things that get in the way all the time. And I've had to really focus on getting it in while I could, even if it's 15 minutes, because throughout the day I can actually do that in chunks. And it actually is just as good, if not better sometimes, than doing a full length workout. Yeah. So it's alleviating a lot of the pressure around it and getting rid of the all in sort of mentality towards it.
There's pros and cons. Cons, your body's probably going to take longer to recover. You're a little bit more prone to injury, and you're more likely to have more solidified muscle imbalances or issues just because you're older. So if you've been moving bad, you've been moving bad for longer periods of time. What are the pros? You're wiser. This is true. if I work out with a 25-year-old or I work out with a 45-year-old, I mean, everybody's got an ego, but the 25-year-old is more likely to not be very wise. Whereas a 45-year-old goes, you know what, actually, let's not put more weight on the bar. I just want to feel good right now. Whereas a 25-year-old's like, I don't care. I just want to add weight to the bar and see what happens. So there's definitely pros and cons. Here's a wonderful pro for people who work out for years and years and years and then hit this age. It requires way less intensity and volume to get your body to stay in shape than it does to get there in the first place. Like, I work out now way lighter. In fact, I'm doing almost all machines right now because I'm trying to give my body a break and check my ego. So I'm working out, getting a pump with machines. I'm using weight that in the past would have been a waste of time for me. Right now, I'm maintaining my physique because of the years that I have under my belt training. So there's a lot of pros there. You can also, you train smarter. I'll tell you what, a smart 30-minute workout is better than a dumb 1.5 hour workout. So there's a lot that you could do with this. And I'll say this, I trained a lot of everyday average people. All of us did. My most fit clients, okay, were almost all in their 40s, almost all of them. Now, is it because their age gave them an advantage and, because no, obviously they're at a disadvantage compared to the 20-something or 30-something-year-olds that I would train, but they were smarter about it. They took more time. They were they listened more in terms of mobility and correctional work. And they were also had developed discipline. They tend to develop discipline, or at least value developing discipline, because when you're 45, you start to figure things out because you have kids, you work, and you're like, ooh, I got to have some structure because this isn't going to work if I don't have structure. And then when you go to work out, you're like, you know what? What worked with my kids and my job, I'm going to apply to this workout. I'm going to be smart about it. I'm going to do things the right way. So, so there's a lot going for you either way. But yeah, I mean, you have to eventually change how you approach your workouts because, 45, you start to feel it. 55, 65, 75, you can't have the same idea of what a good workout is because you're going to hurt yourself. And it's not gonna work.
When you're 20-something years old, you tend to kind of muscle everything or get through everything through motivation and push and drive. And I think as you get into your 40s, you start to realize it's much more of a dance. It doesn't take, it's not, you start to cut out a lot of the fat. You realize that it's not as hard as you thought it was. Like, I think I pushed myself so hard in my 20s and maybe early 30s trying to accomplish something or get somewhere, and look back now and go like, man, that could have been a lot easier for myself.
Yeah, totally.
Could have been a lot easier if I would have just backed off this a little bit, increased that a little bit more, focused a little bit more on sleeping here, did a little bit. And I think the results would have came fast. And I think through trial and error. I mean, and you would think because we're all professionals in the field that we should know better. Like, we all started in this 20 years ago or more, that you would, but no, even us, even with the education, the experience, still had to learn the hard way of banging our head against the wall. And I think by this point in our lives, we've kind of figured that all out. It's like, and that study, it was so revealing to me when you shared that. I think it was earlier in the year about, 1/7 of the volume is required to maintain muscle. So it takes 7 times more to build it and only 1/7 of that to hang on to that. And if you just think about that for a second, if someone did the exact same workout every single day, 7 days a week for 20 years of their life, they literally can reduce that down to working out 1 day a week to maintain what it took them to build that. That's crazy. When you think about that.
Now, there's other additional benefits of being active every day, mental benefits, all that stuff.
Sure.
But when it comes to what you're saying, I mean, I noticed that. I keep it. Nope. You know how hard it was for me to keep my body weight above 195 pounds when I was in my 20s? It was like, now it's like I work out once a week and I stay that way. So it's a big difference. But here's my favorite part about getting older. When I was a lean, muscular 22-year-old, I look different than other 22-year-olds. Let me tell you, man, you put me around a bunch of 43-year-olds now, and I look way better. And that's only going to continue as I continue to age. So as you get older, stop comparing yourself to your younger you. Look at your peers. You'll blow them out of the water.
Go to your high school reunion. Yeah. Have a real good time.
That's it.